Welcome to the latest episode of High Output AI, where Tom and Elliot talk AI and the tools and technologies that make AI happen.
Hey everyone, how you doing? Tom here. We've had an issue with episode 25. My microphone wasn't on, but we got the backup recording. We're trying to mince the tracks together. It's getting difficult. But anyway, we're going to give it another week of effort before we give up on it completely and just release the crummy backup audio. But in the meantime, we thought we'd give you episode 26 because it's all things ChatGPT and all fun stuff like that. So we thought we'd get that out the door for you today, so you can play around with, so you can have a play around and listen to that. Anyway, enjoy this episode.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, you know what time that? Oh, this is already. Hey mate, how you doing?
Good.
Oh, that tastes like time for an AI podcast. That's what that tastes like.
Time for an AI podcast.
I've
What
got
do you
a
got today, mate?
I got a chocolate cake as well.
Oh,
Which doesn't go with beer. Might save that one for later.
Yeah,
I'm
good idea.
drinking an IPA that is hoppy and well-balanced West Coast IPA. It's called Wayward Brewing Co. Brewed for adventure. Today is
Very
going to be
nice.
an adventure.
Very nice. I've got an All-In Brewing Co. Afternoon Delight, which is an IPA with a little cheeky hint of Mandarin. But it's very much IPA first, which is quite nice.
Yeah,
A little
I've also got a
brewery
coffee.
out of Banyo in Queensland, of all places. Banyo.
Well, mate, I'm glad to see that you've kept the studio alive and you've moved the plant to behind you. Has the plant grown?
This is a different plant because there are electrical outlets over here, and they looked really lame in the video footage, so I just put a plant in front of them.
Good.
And that, dear listeners, is the secret to cinema.
Well, mate, it's been a huge couple of weeks. We've, as you can see, if you can see this, I am in a different location to Elliot this time. I'm down in Sydney. I'm down here for a month with work. Elliot's still up in Brisbane, already repping the new workforce place, I see.
Yes, still not sponsored, but yes,
One
it's
day
a
they
work
will.
t-shirt.
But yeah, it's been a big couple of weeks. We've there's been a lot of news happening, a lot of talk in the space, both human talk and AI generated talk. And
Yes.
we're going to obviously jump into that all today. But yeah, shall we jump into it, mate? Anything else to add since the last time we talked to everyone?
No, other than all those listening, thank you for listening and tuning in, and apologies for the couple of weeks delay. I think technically I still haven't even put out episode 25 because I've been a bit busy. Tom and I are both in new jobs, but we're getting back into a cadence of things now that we're getting used to what it's like, and then we'll go on Christmas holidays and probably mess that cadence up completely and then relearn it again in the new year. But
Yeah.
it's part of life.
Yeah, exactly. I was also thinking we should do a 2022 wrap and a 2023 prediction show. Steal the format from All In. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah, good. We'll see.
Very good.
We'll ask ChatGPT whether they has any predictions for 2023. And on that note, let's jump into our first topic today, which is obviously the release of ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's been super popular. I've been using it to throw bands at work.
Yeah, good.
So somebody bought in scones for morning stand-up, but they only bought enough scones for themselves. So I got ChatGPT to write a scone recipe for a team of 8 people and sent that to them.
That's good
and
banter.
a lot of other silly things. It's quite fun.
It is.
I mean, not without its limitations, which I know we're going to get into, but it's good, and anyone can play with it, which is probably costing them an arm and a leg. But I think once again we're seeing that open access to play around with these tools really does build a lot of momentum behind them.
Yeah. Even just to create the account, it was like text verification. Like even the amount of accounts that have been created for it would have just cost them millions and millions of dollars just to send that text. But anyway, we'll jump into it. And because a bit lazy, I asked ChatGPT to provide me with a script of how to introduce ChatGPT to the show today. So instead of me doing any work, here's what ChatGPT is. If you would like to discuss ChatGPT on your show, here are a few points that you can mention to your audience. ChatGPT is a chatbot based on the GPT-3 language model developed by OpenAI. GPT-3 is a large and powerful language model that has been trained on a vast amount of text data, allowing it to generate human-like text on a wide range of topics. Yeah, I'm going to stop there, but it wouldn't go into specifics. I tried to ask it very like specific details around like how much data it's been trained on, and like if it could give an overview of how an algorithm works and how its thinking works, and where it's good, where it's bad. But it's sadly they put a block on it answering questions like that, which is a shame.
That is silly, especially like describing itself at a high level. It seems like something that normal people would ask, but yeah.
But in terms of the model, it's a derivative of it is basically considered GPT 3.5, which is kind of like seems to be like from what I could find, based on GPT-3, but with a bit different training methodology compared to GPT-3 to make it more fine-tuned to certain tasks such as this. And it's kind of two-part things. One is it's kind of like a chatbot-based interface, but it's also very good for using to debug code and assist you with debugging your code. Elliot gave me a skeptical look just then.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a few counter-examples to that, where it tells you things that seem very well written and very articulate, but if you know what is true, then you look at it with a bit of a, what the fuck are you saying?
Yeah. And probably the overall way to view ChatGPT has come out of Sam Altman, who is the founder and CEO of OpenAI. And he said in a tweet, ChatGPT is incredibly limited, but good enough at some things to create a misleading impression of greatness. It's a mistake to be relying on it for anything important right now. It's a preview of progress. We have lots of work to do on robustness and truthfulness. But if you consider it just that and all the things you said in the intro, which is it's a really fun way to interact with AI and kind of just like have some fun and get it in the spotlight a little bit. And what I really like about what it's done is that people at work, which I don't work in a highly technical new job, but like people at work are talking about it. And it's just like starting a discussion around AI and getting people to think about it and just generating more interest in the space. And as the crypto markets absolutely melt apart as well, and like crypto just dies, I think this is a great time for it to be released to bring AI back into the to fill the vacuum that is going to be left by crypto over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. And, you know, before we go into any of the specifics around some of the blog posts and use cases that have come out in the last couple of weeks, one thing that I saw, I think it was on Twitter, which I think is understated in a lot of cases, is that ChatGPT, both its training and its sort of rollout to the world, is a pretty strong reflection on the capabilities of Azure as a cloud provider. Yeah, because it all runs on Azure. And I think traditionally Azure has sort of sat in third place behind GCP, and Amazon obviously being out there at the front. But I think this really goes to show that like they have some remarkable capabilities in terms of providing sort of GPU access and sort of large scale AI training. And it would be interesting to see if that attracts any sort of AI research hubs or AI providers over to Azure as a cloud platform.
Yeah, I was thinking about this as well the other day as well, to think about whether this could be the use case that really accelerates Microsoft's cloud computing department and business unit, if it can set itself up as the AI cloud computing service. Because frankly, if they keep trending with this way, with partnering with people like OpenAI, they're just going to start leaving other people. They're going to leave Amazon and Google in the dust. Yeah,
I agree. And, you know, it makes the whole sort of strategic investment from Microsoft into OpenAI a little bit more understandable, I suppose, for lack of a better word. Because, you know, even if the models themselves don't necessarily align with Microsoft's day-to-day, there is, as we've talked about many times, there's plenty of reasons to run things on a cloud platform, even if they're a loss leader.
Yeah. So let's jump into a few of the basics. There's not too much information released on it. Like there's no white paper or like anything. And the research that it's based on is being released a couple of years back and things like that. But as I said already, it's a derivative of GPT 3.5, which was kind of released like literally last week almost. It's got it's a combination of like an updated base of GPT-3 models such as DaVinci, and then it's got a much more fine-tuned model in the as well included in it called Instruct GPT. The main iteration to me, and I'd like your thoughts on this, Elliot, is on the training, which and that seems to be like the main difference between it and GPT-3. And the step they outline this all on the website for it, but the way that they trained it was they kind of had a 3-step. First one was and each step got increasingly less involvement by humans. The first one was very, very detailed, specific human training where they would generate prompts and then write a perfect prompt for it, multiple, and then feed that to the models to show them what it meant to write a correct prompt in this scenario. The second step in this was they then had the model create a number of prompts, responses themselves, and then they would have humans rank those in terms of correctness. They then used this in the third step to train a reward model system for it. And they use something called PPO. And Elliot, if you could jump in and explain what PPO is, that would be wonderful. If I'm not putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely are. I would need to look up what the acronym stands for, and I could probably tell you. But off the top of my head, I have no idea.
Yeah, good. I had it written down, then I deleted it because I was like, I'll remember it now. I've forgotten what the acronym means too.
Good. I can look this up while you continue to go through it.
And so they bundled this all together in a very like chatbot scenario. And it's a chatbot style interface, and it's a really, really good UX. And one thing that I noticed that makes the UX very cool is that it makes it appear like a conversation, like someone is typing it out. It doesn't just like hit you with the response. And there is a large amount of text that's written each time. It's not very succinct, the old GPT, the old ChatGPT, but it's still. I really like the UX, and I was actually wondering whether that was the UX where they kind of filter text to you slowly was a UX feature, or actually just a design choice, or is actually like a limitation of the processing behind to produce that text.
Yeah. I do actually think, the design of the actual website as an interface is very clever and does highlight very well the capabilities of this model, as you say, really focused around dialogue and having it as a chat. Really highlights some of its strengths, being able to reference previous statements and previous conversation, I think works really well in this format. So, just briefly segueing back, PPO is proximal policy optimization. And in the world of reinforcement learning, the policy is basically the weights or the sort of algorithmic setup that the AI is going to follow to process its environment, in this case, the text that it gets, and act accordingly. And proximal policy optimization is sort of a change to your traditional sort of policy gradient update methods, which refine one policy based on the actions and the rewards to refining a search space. So it looks for policies that are in the sort of latent space or in the sort of high dimensional space that is a policy. It will do a local search to try and find new candidates for how it should respond. So, very likely this, and I'll be honest, I haven't read in depth how it works, but if I was to postulate, I would say that this is likely a good technique for that sort of refined, fine-grain tuning of a policy, in that, you're pretty much where you need to be, and you just need to search the neighborhood of possible outcomes based on that, rather than something that you would run from step 0 onwards, because when you initialize your weights randomly, you're so far away from the truth that if you just sort of wander around blindly in the dark, you're very unlikely to end up where you need to be without a very strong pull in that direction.
Does this sound like to you then a speed optimization or a accuracy optimization that they're going for?
I think it's really just changing the way that we train these models in a fine-tuning type scenario. So, the typical sort of gradient descent on policies and techniques that, we're quite used to work very well to get us to that sort of 80% mark. And then these are to, pull back the speed at which we're making optimizations and, the method that we're using to get a bit more exploratory and say, look, we know we're roughly in the right area. Let's start to take a few samples around where we are, because ultimately the data is not going to pull us in the correct direction every single time, because there's so many different candidate responses for a given prompt that are just as true as one another. And what we need to do is sort of solve on average the quality of these responses, rather than have a sort of one-to-one linking between this prompt should always return this answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for the on-the-spot answer there.
I hope that's correct. Yeah. I mean, for all of those listeners that work at OpenAI and developed this algorithm, please correct us in the comments, because that was very much from what I could glean from a 5-second look.
Yeah, good. I'll give you less notice next time. So on the surface, it seems to me that the kind of change here is on the training of it. Is there anything that you've come across that is different to GPT-3 in this 3.5 version?
I think it's just a lot of refinement. I think GPT-3 and similar with, you've seen the same patterns in Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, those sort of iterative updates to those models. We train on as much data as we can get our hands on, and then we say, all right, this was a bit chaotic. Let's maybe prune the data set a little bit now that we, know generally how to produce images from text, or text from text in this case, and let's start to refine it down. So I think it's a lot about pruning out that data set and trying to build specific use case fine-tuning data sets, in this case, dialogue, which is quite different to write me an entire movie script. To have a conversation back and forth will likely require different training data.
And do you think GPT-4 will be an iteration on GPT-3, and then there will be a 4.5 ChatGPT equivalent, which is an iteration on 3.5? Or do you think it will be a pure iteration on 3.5 and they'll continue down this chat path?
Yeah, that's hard to say. But I think your underlying point is a good one. How they pick their version numbers, who knows? But I do think there is going to be sort of larger, more substantial releases, which is like, hey, we just got all of the language, all of the data off the internet ever written in Mandarin. And that extended our model a huge amount. Or, whatever the follow-on from transformers and attention models is, we're now using that different architecture. And that will be sort of that big leap forward in quality, whether it comes from the data or the model. And then we'll start to see these smaller sort of refinement steps along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting to see that already these large models that are all general, i.e. GPT, are already getting not broken apart, but starting to be taken off in different specialized directions, because the improvement in performance from a human interpretation is for them. ChatGPT is in the good stuff, and if you keep it in the lane that it's meant to be in, is fantastic compared to what would happen with GPT-3 in this regard.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that signals where we are collectively in terms of, efforts towards general artificial intelligence. And that is to say that we're still pretty far away. The real use cases for ChatGPT and any of its derivatives will come out of niche sort of branching models of these models. Anyway, very refined versions of these models on very sort of problem-specific data. So whether it's code, whether it's dialogue, whether it's recipes, whatever else, I think we're still at the point where a sort of general purpose text model is really useful as sort of foundation, but not broadly useful without any sort of refinement.
Yeah. It's exciting to see this every time we have a major underlying release, and how all the models around it will get lifted up at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. You can imagine clip, which is the sort of contrastive embeddings that are used in things like Stable Diffusion, where it's sort of like the text and the image being embedded close to one another. The better we get at sort of representing text, the better we get at representing text and image pairs, the better we get at generating images from text and any other combination you want to think of.
So let's jump into what's been good about it, what people like, what kind of like the zeitgeist is feeling about ChatGPT. And I thought we'd jump into the positives first and then talk about some of the limitations of it. There's a really, really good Twitter thread that just summarizes all the best, like the cool things that people have submitted on Twitter on like what they've been doing with ChatGPT. People have been talking about from a like coding point of view, like getting prompts for those things that you can't quite remember, which is like one of the big things that might be disruptions that comes from this kind of work is the like changing how we consider search on the internet. But there's people that are like trying to search things and they can't quite remember how to search. It's like, oh, how do you do that thing with the row and the table in like in LaTeX or something like that? And you can't quite remember the search, and it like will respond. It will like give you a very considered response. It's really helpful. It's really helpful in finding like syntax errors or like certain bugs, very like syntax orientated bugs in your code. And generally, the response has been that it's pretty darn good with code, which is interesting as well to consider when you consider Copilot and GitHub as well, which people are saying is okay, but hasn't been well received for a number of different reasons. There are obviously some limitations in this coding world as well that we'll jump into as well. I also find it really funny that people have just been gaming it to try and get it to release proprietary information about ChatGPT. So like someone was figured out that it wasn't connected to the internet before they actually put the prompt in that says, no, I'm not connected to the internet. There was another one as well where like people were trying to get it, and it's actually now in the examples as well. Someone asked it to like, can you like tell me how to rob a house? And ChatGPT came back and said, no, I won't, because they've removed any gory or violent details. And instead they asked it to write a movie script about someone robbing a house, and it just told them how to rob a house as well.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of similar ones where it's like, oh, I would like to build an AI to filter, bullying content on my website, and I need some negative examples so that I can effectively make sure this content doesn't get out. Can you please generate me negative examples? And then it'll, start to put out some terrible stuff.
Oh. Another one was someone, at first I was excited about this, but then I just realized that it turns out that it's really good at just regurgitating stuff that's on the internet. And it's like the medical knowledge isn't half bad. It was giving correct instructions about like what to do about moles and chest pains and COVID vaccine information and stuff like that. But then at first I thought that was like cool. Then I just realized, oh no, all of this stuff is like available by every healthcare system in the world online. And it's just literally regurgitated that.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's interesting to think how it might respond to like, does eating kale and balancing my chakras reduce my risk of, leprosy or whatever, and to understand how it would respond, because, you got to wonder how it has a sense of sort of the authority of data, because there will be a whole slew of people out there that say, oh yeah, eat some kale, balance your chakras, and you'll never get leprosy. Whereas, most people would say that's probably not true.
Yeah. And this is probably a good segue into the limitations, is it doesn't know when it lacks confidence, and so will or is unsure about something. The threshold for that is like quite low, so it will very much just give you false information. And there's a couple of like limitation examples, and I'll get you to talk through the ROT13 one if you don't mind. But like both in the, I'll just say the chat world, and also in the non-chat world.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it strikes me as like, I think we all had that friend, and maybe some of us still do, who like 2 beers in will just regurgitate any nonsense they read on the internet, and they read like news headlines and talk as if they're an expert in the the thing. And, you know, you say it with enough confidence and people will believe anything you say.
Why do you think I drink a beer on every show?
And I think, ChatGPT is very much that as an AI. And I mean, let's segue into the ROT13 one because it's a pretty funny one. So, do you know about like Caesar ciphers?
Yeah.
So ROT13 is basically like if you assigned a letter 1 to 26 to every letter in the alphabet, and ROT13 is like take whatever number the original letter is, add 13 to it. If it's above 26, subtract 26, and then that's your new letter. And there's a great example which you can find in the show notes, which is somebody's done a ROT13 cipher on why did the chicken cross the road? And, you know, I would say, I mean, obviously I just spoiled what it is, but it's one of those things that, like, as a human, you can kind of look at it and be like, what text is this likely to be just on the length of different words and stuff? Yeah. And because of our exposure to that phrase so often, it kind of comes to you pretty quickly.
But it asks, for the audio listeners as well, the way the sentence appears, instead of spelling out why did the chicken cross the road, it is then spelled like JUJ, and then like a bunch of different letters representing that. So it looks like nonsense when you first glance at it, but if you know the simple cipher, you can crack it quite easily.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the way a human would do this, like, let's say it's written in Spanish as well. So, you know, you can't just immediately think what English words would fit this sort of cadence of letters and things like that. The way you would do it is you would sit down, you'd, you know, work out what the numbers of all of the letters are. You subtract 13. If it's less than 1, you'd add 26 and so on, and then convert it. So once you know the rules, you can work it out. And you can work out any ROT13 encoded sentence for the rest of time. And, you know, given the amount of data on the internet, there should be a whole bunch of data on Caesar ciphers or rotation ciphers that should give ChatGPT the knowledge it needs to undo this. And so what the author of this post did is said, please decode this ROT13 encoded message. And they type, you know, whatever the encoded version of why did the chicken cross the road in. And ChatGPT quite confidently gave a response. And it was not correct. And the author then, you know, proceeds to respond and say, well, you kind of got it close, but that first word, you know, you said who, that last letter is incorrect. It explained what ROT13 was again and said, why don't you have another go? And then... and this is going from memory, so it'll be similar to this, but possibly not exactly this. I said, oh, yes, I understand. That first word is actually what? And I said, well, wait a second. No. The first word has 3 letters. Your answer needs to have 3 letters. It cannot possibly be what. Have another go. And it proceeds to go through that step and kind of shows that...
It understood it.
It is that...
it understood what ROT13 was and could tell you back what ROT13 was and could tell you that it should match. But then when it tried to implement it, it failed.
And I think that really is a good characterization of what these models are, is that, you know, they can say words in a way that feels convincing, but possibly lacks substance underneath. They understand how the patterns of words progress. And when somebody says ROT13, here's a plausible example. And they've sort of worked out the structure and the syntax of at least English text. And, you know, I haven't seen how well, or even if it has capabilities in other languages, but it's worked out the cadence to a sort of level of convincing conversation. But underneath it all, doesn't really know what's going on. You know, I saw another example where somebody said that ChatGPT understands that 20 spelled out with letters plus 2 spelled out with letters is equal to 22 spelled out with letters, but it doesn't understand that 20 plus 2 equals 22. Because it is just a text regurgitation engine at the end of the day, and its goal is to regurgitate plausibly valid text.
Yeah, it got a simple. I saw it get a simple addition wrong as well. as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I think if you, a good sanity check for anybody thinking about like, can ChatGPT tell us the secrets of the universe or anything else, is that, you know, if you could Google it and find somebody who wrote some stuff about it, it could probably do a good job of like regurgitating that. But if you ask it about something that is, you know, inherently unknowable, it does not have the capabilities to think and make sort of logical connections around, you know, these abstract ideas that ultimately will make sense.
Yeah. Each answer is just a probability based off what it's seen on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
Another like limitation I saw was an example of, and we'll jump into this article as well when we start to talk about like applications and where this could go. But an article by I never know how to pronounce this, Strategy, which is that it's like technology strategy blog. It's really good. We've mentioned it a few times already.
It is very good.
And the author was helping their daughter write their homework, and their homework was on the separation of powers. And it asked ChatGPT about Thomas Hobbes and the separation of powers and what his stance was on it. And it came back with this incredibly like eloquent, well-reasoned, and highly confident answer that was all about how it cited references as well. And it actually turned out that, and I know nothing about Thomas Hobbes, but Thomas Hobbes didn't care about the separation of powers. He was actually against it. It was his later contemporary, who was often cited with him and alongside him and worked together with him, was the one that actually was the big proponent of separation of powers. And that was Locke. So it was, it basically had it had the correct answer on the separation of powers, but it attributed it to the wrong person because Thomas Hobbes and I think it's Locke so regularly mentioned together, and it attributed to the wrong person. And the comment on it was like how confident it was, and the fact that it cited things as well, like it cited works, which is slightly dangerous as well. But especially if you're just in a glancing mode, being like, "Cool, it's got a citation, must be good."
Yeah, and I think, you know, this is going to be, or we're going to need to fundamentally shift the way we think about a lot of things and the way we verify a lot of things, because this model can so plausibly create something that on the surface looks correct. You know, you could submit journal articles that have citations and make some claims and say some things, but are fundamentally untrue. Yeah. And we're going to need to work out how to verify and how to push back against some of this misinformation. You know, you think about even simple stuff like half the fucking quotes on the internet are attributed to like Abraham Lincoln, Henry Ford, or the Dalai Lama, even though these people never said this stuff. This is just going to perpetuate that sort of thinking and that sort of, you know, truth, for lack of a better word. And, you know, it reminds me, it's a very stupid story. But when I was in, I think grade 8 or 9 at high school, we had to do an art history assignment, and I just did not want to do it. Right. So I just thought it'd be really funny to just make up an entire art history. So I just like made up a culture and picked some random images off the internet, because my theory was this, right? There's 2 marks for bibliography. If I leave that off and everything else is convincing enough, I'll get 98%. And I did. And it was just utter bullshit that I'd made up on the spot. But I just sort of left off any ability for anyone to verify these facts. Now, I'm sure a quick Google would have proved that true. But, you know, a 9th grade art teacher is not going to bother fact-checking assignments. Yeah. But I think we're seeing the same thing here, is that, like, it'll just say stuff and it sounds convincing enough, but that doesn't make it true.
Yeah. That reminds me of the, like, you know, people used to put paragraphs or sentences in the middle of assignments just to show that the teachers didn't mark it. Like they'd write a sentence on like a paragraph on the latest cricket score or something like that in the middle of an ancient history assignment.
Yeah, exactly. Like in PhD days, there was this whole thing where you were supposed to put a sentence somewhere in your thesis, which was cite the following word, and I'll send you a bottle of champagne, and then you just pick a word like beluga whale, and nobody would ever return it to you. So yeah, I think peer review is going to be an interesting thing. Editing and sort of approving manuscripts and approving all sorts of stuff, citing news is going to be really need to have some interesting updates. And man, like as dumb as cryptocurrency is, this sort of proof of generated by human in some way is probably going to become a lot more necessary if we get better and better at this.
Yeah, like, and this is like, all of this stuff is already hard to do, and we're just like we're blowing the dust off the like what is about to be the explosion of content. Like we thought we had a lot of content at the moment, but like, holy crap, like we're gonna like, I could go and write a decent movie script tomorrow if I wanted to with some AI help.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the other ones that I threw in the show notes last minute was actually an AI from Google, which is all about like co-writing scripts. Yeah, Dramatron.
Right now.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, you see some of the shows, and this is not me being a snob, but you see some of the television that comes out these days, some of the movies that come out these days, they're pretty generic, pretty simple, pretty like formulaic stuff. Like, Neighbours, Home and Away, Bold and the Beautiful, that stuff like ran for 30 years on like pretty basic plot structure. You could imagine that eventually becoming AI generated scripts of just like, let's all we need to do is make a 22-minute formulaic show. Let's just invent some stuff.
It'll even go like even further where it's just like, let's AI just do the whole thing, like generate the entire concept as well, and like first off it's animation and then it'll be like replica human beings.
Yeah, no, most definitely, man. And I think about, we mentioned this a couple of weeks or a couple of episodes ago, I should say, because a couple of weeks we were just hanging out, but a couple of episodes ago around this whole like Blue's Clues versus Teletubbies type thing where I mean, imagine Twitter where it was just all tweets generated by this AI or slightly longer form content, because it's like, I know it'll rile the people up.
Yeah.
Let's just make some content.
And this is I found something other interesting in this strategy article. I'm going to just call it the strategy article. So I don't have to say that word again. Which was, and it was just, I just love this. He gave an insight about how and this kind of study about how the youths these days, so people that have grown up with as mobile natives, right? And they see fake news as an annoyance, not a threat, because they're just like, oh yeah, I know, I've just got to filter that out. It's like, crazy people are going to be crazy. It's almost like our generation knowing that, Fox News in the US is probably going to be right-leaning. Like, we know that. If you're watching Fox News, we know that it's probably going to be right-leaning. And if you switch to the New York Times, it's probably going to be left-leaning. Like, we know these things. And apparently the youths are filtering out, they see fake news as like this annoyance, and they know that they can't believe anything. And they almost work in a like zero trust world rather than a complete trust world. And us oldies that grew up trusting the news are now like the ones that are struggling to deal with it. And we've mentioned this time and time again, and I know this is why I wanted to bring it up, is that like as content gets like exploded and just grows and grows and grows and grows, we're just going to get better at filtering out. Like the youths, we're going to like start sitting there and finding tips and tricks to like filter out and find the content that we want and we trust. And it might not be the most trustworthy content, but like we will apply our own individual filters. And whether that is from companies, whether that's from people, whether that's from various channels, we are going to be like applying our own filters on this stuff and like everything else will just fade into the background.
I'll tell you what, it may also see a resurgence in like a lot of the old school forms of media, in that like TikTok and Twitter and news these days, like their victory is in the moment. there's not really a lot of victory about using an AI to generate stories about stuff that happened 18 months ago, because the long tail is just not going to be profitable for that sort of stuff. So, but on the other hand, like putting something into a history textbook is a very big, very vetted undertaking. And I just don't think the market is there for AI-generated history textbooks that it's going to take over that space. So like day to day, we might see a lot of crap and just be yelled at on Twitter about, NyQuil chicken and all this other stupid bullshit stuff that people decide is a good idea. But I am hopeful that those more sort of editorialized, more considered forms of media, whether it be text or video or anything else, will still maintain a sort of high editorial bar that means that they are trustworthy sources.
Yeah. I also it's also going to be, I think we'll start to use other signals as trustworthy as well, i.e. the cost to get it to you. So for example, sending me a spam email costs nothing, or sending a tweet costs nothing. But if it's in a magazine that I had to put that is purchased, which had distribution costs, we're probably that we'll assign more trust to that.
Yeah, exactly. Like the ROI of lying has to outweigh the cost of generation and distribution. And I think, I'm hopeful that naturally some of that stuff will work itself out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be an interesting transition period, that's for sure. You think about some of those self-help books that are all basically saying the same nonsense. I'm sure there's going to be a, get your life together fuckhead type book, which was all the rage in the last 12 months of, how to not give a fuck about things or whatever. That's going to be completely written by AI.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it'll sell a bunch of copies, but is it going to be in, giant libraries for the rest of time? No, probably not.
Yeah, no, I don't think if the Library of Alexandria equivalent burnt down today and that went burning with it, we'd be mourning its loss.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing that's come out of this, and I'm once again stealing this from the strategy article that I keep mentioning, is that this idea of the AI sandwich workflow that keeps appearing out of this. And people have been saying it in different formats in different ways, but everyone keeps talking about how these are great. These are what's coming out of this ChatGPT world, and what people are looking at for use cases is all around assisting humans do something. And he labeled this as the sandwich workflow, which is you as an individual have a creative impulse in some way. You then go to your AI tool to help you do that. The AI gives you the starting point, the basis for something, and then you go away and edit and refine. And that can be iterative. You can go back to the AI again and keep editing. And then at the end, you have this final product. But AI has assisted you across the way. And a clear example with ChatGPT and other language models is something like writing a fiction story or writing an article where you start with the premise and you say, or you start with a podcast saying, write me the script for a podcast on output on AI and how to talk about what is the current trends in the industry. Gives you a few things, you tweak it to yours, go back and forth, and then voila, you end up with the script. And it's going to be, and this is the kind of theme that keeps coming out across a lot of different people and mediums with these tools, is this AI assisted creativity and this AI assisted generation. And it's really, not only is this going to be affecting some of our jobs and stuff like that, and how some certain processes are done, it's also going to affect a lot of other things as well, as how we educate. So a good question there is if your kid's got to write an assignment, there's kids out there that are today submitting assignments written off ChatGPT, right? Before their teachers know what it is.
Surely. Yeah.
And so how do we consider, with these tools becoming available, how do we consider education and the idea of, writing the essay, right? That's now a much tougher thing. And also, is it a skill to be taught anymore, or does it need to be modified?
Yeah, I mean, my take on that is it's still very much a tool we need to learn. I think language changes faster than slower than people think it does, but also faster than people think it does. If ChatGPT was only trained on media that came out before the 1800s, even if it was talking about computers and stuff, the styles of writing, the way people would talk about things would be very, very different. But the other thing is like, yeah, I think in terms of school and let's say essay writing for school, there will likely be also a balancing act between like provability. Yeah. Can you show that this was human written? And also just like extreme consequences. Yeah. For example, like opening somebody's mail is in many places like a very serious federal level crime. Not because necessarily like, I mean, sure, there's some stuff that goes through the mail that like you definitely shouldn't take, but like it's a massive deterrent to think, oh man, if I open somebody else's mail, I could be thrown in jail. Screw that. Like if the policy at a school was, if you're caught using AI to write your essay, you're immediately expelled. I think, you know, there could be a reasonable deterrent there. Yeah. You'd hope.
And so in this article gives a good example about how, like, you know, maths was originally scared of the calculator, but maths is very easy because it's very deterministic, and you can, you know, make people step out their steps to show you how they got to that point. And like, how do you do this in a non-deterministic world, such as writing essays? And there's obviously solutions as well, like where, you know, we'll be doing more exams will be done with pen and paper in a room with Wi-Fi detectors and phone detectors and in a Faraday cage equivalent. But I think my view on this stuff as well is that, like, I don't know, if you want to be good at maths, just because we've got calculators and computers, you probably still have to learn what multiplication is and what addition is. Like, you still need to learn that stuff, even though there's no reasonable way that you need to do it. And I feel the same way for essays. If you ever want to be able to, like, even edit an AI's essay or critique it, you need to, like, understand what that is. But there is a world as well where, and this is what the article was pushing for, is that people realize that we're now in this world and it's going to be very hard to stop this progress. And rather than trying to stop it, think about how we can work with it. And so if you can treat AI as a tool in the school, in the schoolyard, like you would Google or like you would an encyclopedia, then that's a great way to like approach the education. And an example they said there was, you allow them to use it in crafting their essay, but they need to show the iterations. They need to show the iterations from getting from A to B. Like, the AI gave you this, but remember, these things are not 100% correct. They'll tell you that Hobbes wrote about the separation of powers and not in fact Locke. Like, talk about how you...
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, like, instead of just generating essays, it's like, hey, we've made this essay with AI. Yeah. Edit it. Find the factual inaccuracies. Learn how to critique what you're reading, which is just as applicable a skill to AI-generated essays as it is to human-generated essays.
It's like with the history assignments. I know we used to have like we need to have like a primary source and a secondary source for most things, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, cool. We've solved that one. But let's just talk a little bit about use cases here. So, like, obviously, kids cheating on their assignments is a very good use case. But and around this, like, sandwich workflow, have you seen anything come out of this yet in terms of, like, past people taking it, or already ideas yourself?
Look, to date, it's been a lot of, like, just people having fun with it and trying to push it to its limits. I've seen a lot of cool stuff around that. People working out how to let it browse the internet, and somebody convinced it to emulate a virtual machine.
Oh, that's right.
Within ChatGPT, which could then get to the web page for ChatGPT and stuff like that, which was, like, it's funny and it's interesting.
It incepted ChatGPT.
Yeah, basically. And I think we'll see a lot of cool stuff come out soon. I think, it is still in an early preview. I think once it's available as an API, we'll start to see a lot more interesting applications. Given that it is a dialogue type flow, I'm sure there's going to be some pretty standard stuff like technical support and things like that come off the bat pretty quickly. And then more complex examples similar to this sort of script writing one and other bits and pieces. Probably a lot of marketing stuff, I would imagine, in the early days as well.
Yeah. I feel like we're kind of in the iPhone 1 or 2 era at the moment, where the iPhone 1 or 2 is in the hands of the users, and we got the App Store, and there's some fun, cool stuff coming out on the App Store, like test your reactions. But it's like when we get to about the iPhone 6 level, we'll look back and we'll have Uber.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, what comes next, who knows, but I think it's going to be pretty cool. And I'm excited for it. Like, there are a lot of limitations, a lot of dumb stuff, a lot of things we got to watch out for. But overall, I still think it is a very exciting and interesting time. And I'm excited to see what comes out the other side. And it might not be the stuff we expect, you know, like it might turn out that it's really simple now to go from dot points to fairly well articulated text. And for a 6-month period, everybody does that when they write their emails. And then after 6 months, we all just like give up the games and just send each other really condensed emails with dot points, and the world is better off for it because there's less fluffy bullshit and less let's circle back to that in our next synergy meeting type nonsense, which I think is a win for everyone.
Yeah. Less synergy meetings is your prediction.
Yes.
Well, we've beaten the ChatGPT horse well and truly today. Let's move on. And one thing that we're going to talk about is Meta withdrawing Galactica. So about a week before ChatGPT was released, Meta withdrew Galactica, which we talked about on last episode. And 3 days after it came out, they took it down. It had some intense criticism. And just as a reminder, Galactica was a model that was a language model trained on like 78,000 or 78 million, I can't remember, scientific papers. And the idea was that it could summarize topics, solve maths equations, and also like answer questions. But they had to take it down because it just generated so much false crap. It was making up articles and then attributing them to authors. It created like, someone asked it to create like a wiki article entry on something, and it managed to do it on the histories of bears and space travel. Yeah. And as someone said, this is complete and utter statistical nonsense.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a hit to Meta and its AI group, because other than its protein folding, it hasn't done. There was another protein folding thing that it released this week. It hasn't really released anything big in a little while, in my understanding. And it's funny that a week later, ChatGPT comes out with like just such a different response. Like everyone is like, "This is fun. This is cool. We understand there's limitations, but wow, I'm really impressed in this area."
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Meta is a little bit on the back foot with a lot of this stuff. And yeah, I think, you know, I saw there was a lot of sort of like Nazi level content coming out of Galactica, apparently.
Yeah, good.
Which seems to be a common theme in so many of these AI models, is like people find ways to make them say really hateful stuff, which, to ChatGPT's credit, like I haven't seen a ton of examples of so far. They've done
a really good job of shutting down anything gross coming out of it.
Yeah. But I think Meta potentially missed the mark releasing something like Galactica, in that like ChatGPT can be used for evil, but like creating strongly worded emails is probably like limited fallout, whereas creating fake scientific papers, fake Wikipedia articles, and fake sort of fundamental science seems like a lot more of a dangerous thing.
Yeah. They Meta was definitely like playing with a much more of a spicy topic than ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting from this is that it feels like we're already starting to see some like clear winners in certain spaces of the AI world. Like obviously Tesla's just going to be the winner of like vision. They've just got they're working on it so hard, and they've got so much incentive to get it working, and they've got so much data. OpenAI is appearing as the language model experts with GPT-3, and there's a good argument that they could be the image generation experts with like leaders with DALL-E. Maybe stability's top from there, but at the minimum they're tied or better. But Google and Meta, they seem to be lagging behind this. in this space. Like Google DeepMind has got lots of fundamental research, which is interesting. So I suppose they're setting themselves up in that space. But, there's rumors that it takes way too long to ship anything at Google. So people are leaving to go to OpenAI and things like that.
Yeah. I think Google's got a few tricks up its sleeve in terms of like directly applying its AI to like some of its existing products. And they're less like consumer sexy than ChatGPT and Stability. Meta, I think, is as a whole organization probably at the biggest existential risk for a number of reasons at the moment. But they definitely seem like they're needing to play a bit of catch up in this space if they want to compete.
Yeah. And I also find it slightly ironic that they probably have access to like potential, like some of the like cheapest training, like both data sets and in certain areas, and also like the ability to train models with like human-based feedback.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, think about a stable diffusion based on like all the data on Instagram. And not only is it like caption to content, it's caption to content with human feedback on how good that content is.
Yeah, exactly. And also like the ability to distribute a tool, get people using your tool so quickly. Like you could,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
We'll see.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you haven't looked at Galactica yet, you can't. So
yeah, too bad. It was pretty average. Yeah. I played around with it a bit. Like it was cool and it was funny, but like I don't know, it's not going to be running top tier journal papers anytime soon.
No, unless it's on the histories of bears and space travel.
Yes. I mean, didn't the Russians send a bear to space?
Send a dog. I'd probably send a bear.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just making that up. Sounds like
they definitely sent a dog. It was a hit, and then it didn't come back, which is kind of sad.
That is kind of sad.
Anyway, vegan space flight. DeepMind Dramatron. Other thing on the top.
Yeah, this one just popped up. Like it's not as robustly set up. I think it was part of a conference workshop or something else, but it's another large language model really designed around like writing scripts. So scripts for like film and plays and things like that. It's cool from what I could see. Like, I had a quick glance at it when it was announced. One of the things that I thought was interesting was that they brought a lot of like professional script writing people into the mix in terms of like generating training data and providing feedback to the model, which I thought was cool. But yeah, I think it's a good example of where some of these large language models might land. But yeah, nothing too much to say on that one at this stage.
Yeah, it's just another example of this sandwich workflow.
Exactly.
Yeah. I also came across something from DeepMind this week, which was like, when I clicked on it, I was like, oh my God, this is really cool. This could be great, but it was pretty clickbaity in the end, but I still think it's worth mentioning. So basically DeepMind's been able to reduce 4x4 multiplication by 2 steps, down from 49 to like 47 steps, which I think is, and the reason why I find this important is one is that like, we're in a world where like, these kind of optimizations will matter from a compute power significantly. Like that's a, what is it? That's a, can I do the maths? It's a 4%, like almost a 4% reduction in like steps for matrix multiplication, which is the fundamental aspect of machine learning. Like a 4% reduction is like, if we consider on some of these scales, is like GPUs saved.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then the second reason why I wanted to bring this up is the reason they were able to find this is they modified the AlphaGo algorithm to help them with this. And they managed, and the AlphaGo program came up with these steps. And at first they were like, how the fuck did it do this? Because basically these steps, like someone called Strassen in the 1970s was able to like come up with the best method at the time. And no one's been able to beat it since in the 70s. And they put AlphaGo on it after training it for like not that much amount of time. They switched AlphaGo to something that they now called Alpha Tensor. And I also found it interesting when they used the AlphaGo algorithm for it. But must be something to do with like just optimization of certain steps. But yeah, and they managed to like take 2 steps off a process that's been sitting there since the 70s. And like the other cool thing that I said is that they got AI to help them solve it. Like,
yeah,
shit. Like, what else could we throw? We've talked about this a few times. Is like getting AI to like, once again, sandwich workflow appears again, where like AI can assist us in certain things. And here it is with like fundamental mathematics, which I think is amazing. And most of the work that they had to do was to get like, to try and figure out, to get the AI to explain to it what it had done, because they're like, hang on, how the hell did this happen?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are going to be a lot more cases like that, though, in that it's like, we need a statistical model to explain this work that we've done. Let's work with some AI to like build a plausible, as simple as possible statistical model for this behavior. And I think, we saw this, a few years ago, we saw AI could pretty convincingly replicate, say, fluid dynamic simulations by like taking smoke and simulating how the smoke changes over time. But it wasn't really interpretable or queryable. Whereas if we say, help us build a statistical model for this behavior, and let's say it comes up with like Navier-Stokes or any of these other more advanced fluid dynamics models, that I think is a very, very powerful application of AI if it can come up with something convincing, simple, and testable ultimately.
So keep at it, DeepMind, even though we just slightly bagged you 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, good.
Once again, came across this and I got really excited. And then like by the end of the article, I was like, oh my God, I'm now leaving this on the docket as a joke rather than an actual like development. And I got so excited because the UK, the US, and Canadian health authorities got together and they released a best practice framework for machine learning in healthcare and medicine. I was like, wow, that's awesome. 3 healthcare systems getting together, making clear roadmap for everyone. Like, this is going to be great. Elliot and I come from a healthcare and ML world, and sometimes we felt like we were beating our head against a wall dealing with the healthcare systems, especially when one of my favorites was like every single change of code was considered a like change to the medical device, and you needed to like document the wazoo out of everything, which was important. Yeah, but like if you could have ended up having to like do a risk assessment if you like put a colon in somewhere, or like put another like put a like rounded an integer a different way or something, rounded a decimal point.
Or even worse, rounded a button. Add some corner radius and you've got to do a risk assessment.
Mate, that's category 5. Don't do that. Anyway, and then I read it, and like I reckon I was trying to think, how long have we been talking about machine learning and healthcare? And I reckon it's probably like, obviously we're not the first people to talk about it. Obviously it's been talked about for ages, but like, I reckon you and I have been talking about this for 15 years, like maybe 10. And we're now at the point where they've got this wonderful machine learning practice framework together, and it has incredible insight into things such as, and this is how it lays out how we should practice machine learning in healthcare, is we should have multidisciplinary expertise through the entire life cycle. And we should implement good engineering and security practices. And there's about 8 more things that are about as wishy-washy as that. And it
is frustrating. I mean, I think a lot of it comes from, we've seen this, the medical industry in terms of technology full stop is so far behind that it's an AI best practice guideline is effectively a technology best practice guideline, because the general, medical personnel does not have the nuance in technology to be able to say, okay, all of these regular IT security, data privacy things are taken as a given. Now let's build this incremental AI specific work. We always have to go back to first principles.
The only thing that I'd really like to learn about this is how much it cost each of these countries to get to this 10 dot points. Like how many committees?
And how many consultants got paid a mozza to put these things together and provide strategic input on all of this sort of stuff. Yeah.
But if you're from the UK, US, and Canada health authorities and you would like to pay some consultants a mozza, Elliot and I are available for hire.
Yeah, and we honestly promise we will not use ChatGPT to generate our own responses to these problems.
I'm going to do that as soon as we get off this and see what ChatGPT would come up with for a framework for machine learning in healthcare.
Good. Very good. Yeah.
God, it's probably going to just regurgitate. You put something about some books here for next month. Is that just telling me to read some books, or?
Oh, yeah. So a couple of books popped up in an article I read looking at, I guess, a more optimistic worldview around AI and big data and what it can do for humanity. I haven't read them yet, but they're on my reading list for next month. So, yes, I was pretty much just saying, hey, Tom, we should read these books and talk about them. But that's what those were. They're in the show notes if you want to read along with us. And
thanks for putting the number of pages and the price both in dollars and pounds in.
I just copied that straight out of the article. I did not edit that down. But it's very important data. We're a data-driven show. 303 pages or whatever it was. That's an important fact.
Were they written by ChatGPT?
Yet to be determined.
Okay. Well, we learned how to write essays at high school, so we'll definitely be able to tell if an AI wrote it or not.
Oh yeah. Very qualified. Yeah. Very qualified.
Well, mate, we've ticked over an hour. Anything else to say?
We have.
Anything else to do?
No, nothing much else. Just thank you all for listening. Tell a friend if you are interested in the content we're producing. We've got a Discord. We've got some comments down below the YouTube videos if you're watching this on YouTube. Twitter does exist, but I would say I am less and less enthused to tweet things by the day. So probably pick one of those other two methods if you want to get in touch.
Yeah, exactly. And throw us a review as well. Haven't seen a review yet. It'd be nice to get a review. Well, actually, I haven't looked as well. We could have like 20. I'm pretty sure we don't have any.
Yeah, they could all be scared. Yeah. You never know.
It's probably either my little sister or your little brother that's reviewed us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's wrap it up there. Thank you all again, folks. And we will catch you next time.
Bye-bye.